Red Skelton, one of America's most beloved comedians, was born on July 18, 1913, in Vincennes, Indiana. His story did not begin with laughter, but with tragedy. Just 2 months before he was born, his father, Joseph E. Skelton, passed away. Joseph had once worked as a circus clown before trying to settle into a simpler life as a grocer. Sadly, fate was unkind, and the Skelton family lost not only a father, but also its only source of income. Red's mother, Ida Mae, was left alone with 4 children, including the unborn Red. Life was cruel from the start. Poverty pressed hard on the family, and Ida Mae worked tirelessly to keep food on the table. She scrubbed floors, worked as an elevator operator, and took on any job she could find, just to survive. Neighbors pitied the Skeltons, often describing them as hopelessly poor. The local families even warned their daughters not to associate with Red, because they believed he had no future. These words cut deep, but instead of breaking him, they lit a fire inside him. From a young age, Red learned that survival meant hard work, creativity, and finding ways to make people smile. By the time he was 7 years old, he was already selling newspapers on street corners. He watched people closely, studied their expressions, and discovered that laughter could grab attention. Selling papers was not just about shouting headlines, it was also about performing. Without realizing it, Red was shaping the tools of comedy that would later carry him to national fame. At the time, he wasn't dreaming about stages or cameras. He was simply trying to help his struggling family, but even then, his ability to connect with people through humor began to shine. Sometimes, life turns on a single unexpected moment. And for Red Skelton, that moment came when he was just 10 years old. One day, while selling newspapers outside the Pantheon Theater, Red was spotted by a well-known comedian named Ed Wynn. Wynn saw something special in the skinny red-haired boy, and decided to give him a chance that would change his life forever. He bought every newspaper Red had, but instead of sending him on his way, he invited him backstage to see the world of show business up close. For Red, this was magical. The lights, the costumes, the laughter, it was like stepping into a dream. That short encounter planted a seed that would grow into a lifelong passion. Soon after, Red quit school and joined a traveling medicine show at the age of 10. These shows were a mix of entertainment and sales, with performers using jokes and songs to sell miracle cures. It was hard work, but it gave Red his first taste of performing for an audience. By the age of 14, he was already touring with small theater companies. Learning quickly that while he wanted to be a serious actor, people laughed at almost everything he did. Instead of fighting it, Red leaned into the laughter and discovered that comedy was his true gift. He went on to work in vaudeville, minstrel shows, and circuses, constantly improving his skills. These experiences were not glamorous. They were tough, unpredictable, and sometimes humiliating. But they built his resilience and taught him how to handle any type of crowd. Red's mother once said that he did not run away to the stage, it was simply his destiny. From the small medicine shows to the vaudeville circuits, Red learned how to read an audience, adjust his act on the spot, and make people laugh no matter their background. The boy who had grown up with nothing now had a purpose to bring joy to others even while carrying pain of his own. Paragraph 3. Radio fame and Hollywood dreams. By the late 1930s, Red Skelton's hard work began to pay off. He had gone from small traveling shows to larger stages, and finally, he got his first big break on the radio. In 1938, he appeared on The Rudy Valley Show, and his clever humor quickly caught the attention of listeners. Soon after, he became a regular guest on the Fleischmann's Yeast Hour hosted by Rudy Valley. And later, on the Avalon Time Show, Red had a way of turning ordinary stories into funny situations that felt real to people. He didn't just tell jokes, he acted them out with voices, sounds, and characters. His most famous early sketch was The Donut Dunkers, which he performed in 1937. In this bit, he humorously explained all the ways people dunk donuts into coffee. The routine became so popular that it was performed across the country and even helped land him a movie deal. Soon, Hollywood came calling. Red signed with MGM in 1938, and began appearing in films such as Having Wonderful Time and Flight Command. By the early 1940s, he was starring in his own movies, including Whistling in the Dark, Whistling in Dixie, and Whistling in Brooklyn. These films showcased his physical comedy and lovable, bumbling character style. Unlike many other comedians of his era, Red could mix slapstick with heartfelt emotion, making him appealing to families. Hollywood critics at the time sometimes dismissed him as too silly, but audiences loved him. To them, Red wasn't just funny, he was genuine. In many ways, his tough childhood helped him connect with ordinary people because he never forgot what it was like to struggle. While his career in movies gave him fame, it was radio that truly built his reputation. His radio program, the Raleigh Cigarette Program, made him a household name during the 1940s. Millions tuned in weekly, laughing at his characters and stories. For the boy who once sold newspapers on the street, this was proof that laughter could take him further than he ever dreamed. As technology changed, Red Skelton moved with the times. In 1951, he brought his humor to television, launching The Red Skelton Show on NBC. At first, executives doubted whether his comedy would work on TV, but audiences proved them wrong. The show quickly became one of the most popular programs in America. Later moving to CBS, The Red Skelton Hour ran for an incredible 20 years. From 1951 to 1971, making Red one of the longest-running television entertainers of all time. What made the show special was Red's ability to create memorable characters that audiences felt they knew personally. Freddie the Freeloader, a kind but poor hobo, became one of his most beloved roles. Through Freddie, Red reminded people that dignity and kindness could exist even in poverty. Another favorite was Clem Cattledehopper, a goofy country bumpkin, whose silly misunderstandings always ended in laughter. These characters were not just jokes, they were reflections of real people Red had observed while growing up. Families gathered every week to watch him, and for many children, Red Skelton was a comforting figure who made the world feel safer. His comedy was clean, which made parents comfortable letting kids watch. Yet, even while he made millions laugh, Red often carried sadness behind the scenes. He struggled with personal losses and loneliness, but he refused to show it to the public. On television, he was the clown who never failed to smile. Critics sometimes accused him of being old-fashioned, because he didn't use edgy or offensive humor, but Red believed laughter should unite people, not divide them. He often said, "I don't have to say dirty words to get laughs. My mother would have washed my mouth out with soap." This belief made him stand out in an industry that was becoming bolder and more controversial. When CBS canceled his show in 1971 during what was known as the Rural Purge, fans were shocked and angry. For Red, it was heartbreaking. He felt betrayed after giving decades of loyal service, but he chose to bow out gracefully. Even though his television career ended, his influence on comedy was already secured. While Red Skelton's professional life was filled with laughter, his personal life carried deep tragedy. The greatest heartbreak came in 1958 when his only son Richard was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 9. At that time, treatments were limited, and doctors gave little hope. Red and his wife Georgia were devastated. Richard was a bright, happy child, often seen with his father backstage. Red loved making him laugh with magic tricks and silly characters, but now he was helpless. As Richard's illness worsened, Red cancelled shows to spend more time with him. Despite his pain, Red continued performing on television, hiding his grief behind a smile. On stage, he made millions laugh. Offstage, he prayed for a miracle. Sadly, Richard passed away in 1958, just 10 days after his 10th birthday. The loss nearly destroyed Red. He collapsed from exhaustion and grief, and many wondered if he would ever return to comedy. He later admitted that he thought about retiring completely, but his faith and his audience pulled him back. Red believed that Richard would want him to keep making people laugh. Georgia, however, never recovered from the tragedy. The couple's marriage suffered, and she turned to alcohol, struggling with depression until her death in 1976. Friends often said that behind Red's cheerful mask was a man haunted by sorrow. In interviews, he rarely spoke about Richard, but when he did, tears often filled his eyes. This personal pain gave his comedy a deeper meaning. When he played Freddie the Freeloader or told sentimental monologues at the end of his shows, audiences could feel the sincerity. Red wasn't just telling jokes, he was sharing a piece of his heart. He once said, "My comedy comes from pain. If I can laugh at mine, maybe others can laugh at theirs." It was this honesty that made his humor timeless. Although Red Skelton was known for clean, family-friendly comedy on stage, those who worked closely with him knew there was another side. Among his fellow performers, there were whispers of what they called the dirty hour. After long rehearsals, Red would gather the crew and perform his routines in a much more adult style, full of jokes that would never be allowed on television. These private shows were legendary backstage, though they never reached the public. Some say they revealed the frustration of a man forced to keep his true humor hidden. Red himself once hinted that he had to tone down much of his material to please network executives. Another secret surfaced after his death in 1997. His will included a clause that shocked many: if any of his estate was ever used to produce dirty or offensive comedy in his name, the entire inheritance could be taken back. This clause showed how seriously Red valued clean entertainment. He wanted his legacy to remain pure, even if it limited future profits. Some critics argue that this revealed a controlling side to him, but others believe it was simply his way of protecting what he stood for. After all, Red often said, "Laughter is the best medicine, but it should never make people sick." While most fans knew only the gentle clown from television, those close to him understood that Red carried contradictions. He could be playful one moment, strict the next. He loved entertaining children, but lived through the unbearable loss of his own. He painted beautiful clowns in his later years, yet behind those colors was a man who knew deep sadness. These hidden sides only add to the complexity of Red Skelton's legacy. He was not just America's clown. He was a man who carried both light and shadow. After his television career ended in the 1970s, Red Skelton did not fade into the background. Instead, he reinvented himself. He returned to live performances, touring theaters and casinos, where audiences still adored him. Many of these shows sold out, proving that even without television, his charm had not disappeared. At the same time, Red discovered a new passion: painting. His artwork, especially his clown paintings, became highly collectible. Fans saw them as reflections of Red himself, a man who wore a painted smile but carried sadness beneath. By the 1980s and 1990s, his paintings were selling for thousands of dollars, making him one of the most successful celebrity painters of all time. Despite his wealth, Red lived modestly, spending much of his time with his art and close friends. In interviews, he often expressed disappointment in modern comedy, which he felt relied too much on vulgarity. He believed humor should lift people's spirits, not drag them down. In 1997, Red Skelton passed away at the age of 84. The world mourned the loss of a man who had been part of their lives for over 6 decades. Even in death, his influence continued. Younger comedians pointed to him as an example of how to be funny without being cruel. Schools, theaters, and museums honored his memory, and his work was preserved through recordings and collections. His legacy remains a reminder that laughter and kindness can survive through generations. Red Skelton's life was far from easy. He knew poverty, loss, and betrayal, but he turned his struggles into comedy that helped millions. His story is proof that behind every clown is a human being with both joy and pain. And perhaps that is what made him